Hello everyone, Samuel here. I had some spare time just lying around, so I thought, well, I better go through all 124 cardinals and figure out who has the best possibility to become the next pope. So attached in the description, I'll have a link to a Google Sheet, and it kind of goes through all, and it gives more of an explanation than I'll give here. This is mostly just going to be looking at the people that I think are actually likely to become the next pope. Also worth noting that this video will be time dated because eventually some of the information on it will slowly over the years become inaccurate as cardinals age up and become 80 and lose their right to vote in a conclave. But the question that I'm trying to get at here is who might be the next pope? Can we have a logical reasoning to suspect that one cardinal may be more likely than another? I think so. And we'll kind of go through some of the statistics first before we go through some of my considerations that we're going to take into account. But here are some of the statistics that are important to take note of. Currently, there are 124 cardinals of voting age, unless something takes place between the filming or the recording of this video and the uploading. There are 124 cardinals of voting age. Of these voting age cardinals, 13 of them were appointed by John Paul II. 39 were appointed by Benedict XVI, and 72 have been appointed by Pope Francis. I think Pope Francis has just about gotten to almost 60% of voting cardinals have been appointed by him, so he's broken the 50%, so he's appointed more than half. In order to be elected Pope, you need to have a 2/3 supermajority. So right now this corresponds to 83 cardinals. Again, if a cardinal drops dead, God rest their soul. We pray that that won't happen, but if it does, then that number will change. But right now, in order to become the Pope, you need to have the vote of 83 of your fellow cardinals. Now, by continent, I think is also important to break down. There are 53 cardinals from Europe. There are 23 cardinals from North America. There are 14 from South America. There are 16 from Africa. There are 15 from Asia. And there are 3 from Oceania. Now, again, there are actually more than 124 cardinals in the Catholic Church. However, a cardinal is no longer able to vote after the age of 80. Once they turn 80, canon law restricts their ability to vote, and so we're only looking at cardinals that are able to vote, because as long as the rule of 80 years has been in place, we've only seen the cardinals electing from their fellow voters. So we can assume that the same thing might happen in a future conclave. Now, I wanted to go through some of my points of consideration, assumptions that I was making for the next conclave, and I've also included my rating system there, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But I've just written down some notes here just in case I forget what I wanted to say. But the first thing that I wanted to make note of was that there are a lot of Italian cardinals. Italy by far has the most cardinals. The second is America. They have the second most cardinals, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But as of right now, Italians, I think, have about over 20 cardinals, which is a lot. And so really, if you wanted to be elected Pope, you would need to have the support, generally speaking, of the Italian cardinals. I think that's a safe assumption to make, that if you can get the Italians behind you, that already kind of makes it a whole lot easier going forward. Secondly, I think that the cardinals will be looking for predictability in the next candidate. Pope Francis has been a bit of a wild card. He's been fairly unpredictable, and I think that there may be a bit of some, perhaps, buyer's regret from some of the cardinals that have voted for him. Maybe many of them did not know who he was, and I think that that's a safe assumption to make, considering that there's over 120 cardinals that have to vote. I mean, there are a lot of people that you'd have to get to know, and probably not many of them actually knew Pope Francis, and they made their choice, and they get who they get. Maybe they're not happy with that, maybe they are. But I think that in the next conclave, they will be looking for somebody who is proven, somebody who will be predictable, somebody who's not going to just, pull a rabbit out of a hat at, the drop of a match or something like that. They'll want to pick somebody who they'll know they'll see coming what is coming. It's not going to be anything surprising. The third thing is age. As technology continues to improve and as life expectancy continues to go up, they will want to take note, the Cardinals will want to take note that if you choose somebody in their 60s, you could end up with a 30-year papacy, which is a long time. Pope Benedict reigned as Pope for 8 years. Pope Francis has now, I believe, matched that. I think he's over 8 years. And Pope John Paul II obviously reigned for a very long time. So the Cardinals will want to take into consideration, if we're setting somebody up here for a long papal reign, if they do choose somebody younger, they'll want to really make the right choice because it will be a long-lasting decision. On the other hand, if they don't want to have potentially such a long papacy, they will pick somebody older, which I'm inclined to think they might do, just because there is less variety that could come from having something like a 30-year papacy. That's a long time. In the history of the Church, having popes for a long time is unusual. As time has progressed, we've seen popes live longer and longer, but historically over the 2,000 years, it's a bit of an aberration. So that's something to keep in mind. The fourth point is America. I do not believe that there is any chance that an American will be elected pope so long as America continues to be the sole geopolitical superpower. I think there's just too much apprehension to put all the eggs in the American basket, as it were. I think there's also kind of a lot of contention amongst the American Cardinals, so that in itself would be difficult. I think there's only one person, and it's a very long shot, but there's only one American Cardinal, I think, that does have a decent chance, and we'll get to that when we get there. But yeah, so don't hold your breath for, Pope Barron or anything like that, even though he's not a cardinal. The fifth point is pastoral. In accord with this, pastoral mindset set forward by Pope Francis, the Cardinals may look for somebody with more pastoral experience rather than diplomatic or curial experience. And with pastoral experience, they might hope for somebody that has a bit more of administrative acumen, somebody who would be able to maybe clean house a little bit, maybe to bring about some internal reform, like in the economic sphere. So those are things to keep in mind. The sixth point, obviously, is while Pope Francis himself is a European, he's of Italian descent, there's always the temptation to look abroad and see, should we take a cardinal from outside of Europe? And there is a decent possibility that could happen. As we look forward there before, there is a large portion of the College of Cardinals which is not European or North American. So there's always that, unpredictability. And again, such an individual would need to be acceptable to the Italians at the end of the day. So that's going to be something that will come up again. Now, 7, with certainty, even for those who are the most likely to become the Pope, and we'll get there when we get there, because I think that, in my opinion, I do not think actually that the two individuals that are most likely to become the Pope will become the Pope if there is a conclave soon. And we'll get to my reasoning when we get there. But there is an old kind of Roman saying that he who goes into the conclave as the Pope comes out as a cardinal, which is to say that if you go in likely to become the Pope, you will not become the Pope. Now, that's a bit of a trite point, and it's not necessarily true because we've had many occasions of people going in who were likely to become Pope who then did become Pope. Pope Benedict is a good example. Pope Francis apparently was heading the pack. And then, of course, we do have cases where we have surprises. Karol Wojtyła becoming John Paul II was a surprise. So there we go. There's nothing set in stone, really. Even these predictions are a best attempt. And of course, this last one is time sensitivity. Depending on when the Holy Father Pope Francis passes away or abdicates, a significant amount of time may pass between then and now. And so here's some interesting factoid that I came up with. I was just looking at it last night. If the next conclave takes place in 10 years, so I guess that would be 2031, by that time, 92% of the current cardinals So that's 92 of the current Cardinals who are able to vote. Corresponds to 74%. Would have reached the age of 80 and would therefore not be able to vote, which would leave 26% left. Obviously, those numbers would be replenished, but that is a large turnover rate. If Pope Francis were to abdicate or die at the same age as Pope Benedict when he abdicated, which would be 88, so that would be 4 years, 43 cardinals would be eliminated from voting. That's 35%. That to me seems like large numbers. So we always have to keep time sensitive here, and really do, when I mention their ages, keep those statistics in mind, because that will also determine how the conclave goes, because some conclaves are stopgap conclaves. The idea famously, I think, in the 1958 conclave was that they would elect an older fellow so that they would have more time to elect somebody who was younger after a few years would then come along. That theory kind of played out between John the 23rd and then eventually Paul VI. Obviously, there was some Vatican II stuff that went on in between, so not as much of a stopgap as they thought, but that's the way it goes. Now, my rating system. Originally, I wanted to do like 0 out of 5 is no chance, but then I realized that there are too many numbers in between that wouldn't really have any purpose. So as far as this goes, a 1 out of 5 means that they had no chance. This could be for multiple reasons. Either they're too young, too old, tainted by scandal. Those were kind of the big ones. The other one was that they would be relatively unknown. And again, this is kind of harkening back on that predictability point. If you're relatively well known, that means you're somewhat predictable, and that would be well in your favor. A low chance, I kind of rated as somebody who is very much on the outside, but definitely doesn't have no chance. They're somewhat well known or reputable, or they have some level of influence in the church, and people know who they are. Or they don't know who they are, and they've done something noteworthy. 3 out of 5 is neutral. Actually, that number 5 there is incorrect. That should be 6. I did a flip. I flipped one of the possible candidates to the neutral. But there are 6 in the neutral camp, and we'll get there when we get there. But this is kind of like they have nothing really against them or for them. These are kind of just the middling odds. It's possible they could be, but you wouldn't hold your breath. And so then 4 out of 5 is possible. I think that there's definitely a shot, and there are 3 of them. And now they're not the most likely. They're kind of, you have to look a little bit beyond. You kind of have to look a little bit further. But that isn't to say that they're not unknown. They are known. It's just that perhaps for Westerners, we might not be as familiar. And then, of course, the most likely 5 out of 5. There are 2 of them. These are well known, both in media and in the Vatican. They're predictable. No surprises there. So we'll get into it, and I'll kind of do commentary for some, and for others, I don't really think I need to say all that much. So these are my low chance. There are 11 of them. As you can see, we have Cardinal Bertello, Cardinal Dolan, Cardinal Shearer, Cardinal Rete, Cardinal Basungu, Cardinal Ladaria, Cardinal Pengo, Cardinal Piacenza, Cardinal Rajith, Cardinal Marx, and Cardinal Erdo. Now, Bertello and Piacenza are the Italians on this board. Bertello is 78, and Piacenza is 76. So they're kind of in what I would call that golden range of age. They're in the right age category, in my opinion. They kind of hit the mark of not being too young, but obviously they can still be voted in if there's a conclave within the next 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 years. But otherwise, there's nothing particularly about them that would put them into the next level. They're somewhat well known, but they don't really have anything else going for them. I'll make the point now about Cardinal Dolan. He's 71 years old. So I think that, in my opinion, kind of is a little bit on the younger side. But I think if any American were to have a chance, I think that Cardinal Dolan probably is the one who has the most international recognition. He's from New York. He's stereotypically American. So I think that if heaven forbid, they were to elect American, I think he would probably have the best shot. And I think that he's pretty decent at administration, whatever. Ladaria is the head of the CDF. He's a Spanish guy. He's 77. He's older than I thought, actually. But otherwise, there isn't anything particularly that would, make him a cut above the rest. Well, let's look at... okay, Shearer is from Brazil. He is 71. And I think the reason why I put him as a low chance here, I think there wasn't really too much about him, except that he is friends, I think, with Pope Francis, and so obviously that puts you on an insider track. And the same thing goes for Retez. He's 71, and I think it's much the same for him. He's a cardinal from Mexico, but he worked on the same, I think it's called the Apricida document that was kind of chaired under Pope Francis, so I think that they have that friendship there. And obviously, I think he's the president of the Mexican bishops. He's somewhere in there, or CLAM or something. Let's look at Cardinal Marx. Cardinal Marx is young. He's only 67, which for me I think puts him a little bit too young. Cardinal Marx is a bit of a meme because I don't think he would actually be able to get 83 votes because I think he's a bit radical as far as cardinals go. So there's certainly not a whole lot of appeal, but he is well known, so that I think kind of gives him a boost to not have no chance. Even with the low chance, I don't think he really does have a chance. So, he's here because he's here. Let's go. Erdo, I believe he is Hungarian. He's 69, so he's on the younger side. So I think obviously not too much, but I think he does have, at least within Europe, I think he does have some sort of people do know him, but otherwise, again, nothing that really stands out all that much. Pengo is 76. He's from Africa, and I think that if the Cardinals want to go for somebody from Africa, because obviously there's a whole lot of talk, and when we get to my most likely, we'll see this again. People do look to Africa because the church there is growing, and they do have to face many challenges. And I think the same goes for Basungu too. He's very young compared to the rest of these. He's 61. He's on the Council of Cardinal Advisors. Cardinal Bertello is too. That's another reason why he's on here. And maybe Shearer is as well, but I can't remember. So who cares? No, just kidding. But those are reasons for consider them as well. And then Cardinal Ranjith is from Sri Lanka. And I believe that he has influence down there in some way, so people will know him in the Southeast Asia region. But otherwise, again, not too well known overall. He's 73. So those are kind of my low chance. I think you can kind of see there's a little bit of a pattern. Either they're known a little bit, or the places that they're known or known from is not all that important, and they don't really stand out. And for the most part, their ages kind of not in the range. Bertello, Ladaria, Pengo, Piacenza, they're kind of more in the age range. The rest of them are quite a bit younger, so not really, in my opinion, I don't think that they all have the great chance. Obviously, the older ones stand out a bit more, but there you go. Now, these are the 3 out of 5. This is kind of the neutral camp. There's possibility, but there's not really anything for or against, is kind of what I would say, but that doesn't really get across what I'm trying to say. So let's go. Cardinal Scola, he's kind of like the Pope Benedict figure, presumably. I saw some sort of documentary on YouTube that was like, he's been prepared to become like the next Pope after, like the heir for Pope Benedict, and then we got Pope Francis. I don't know if any of that's true, but I think there's certainly that sort of continuity between characters. He's 79, so he's kind of right on the cusp. There would really need to be a conclave immediately, but again, these are kind of the neutrals, so I don't think that he necessarily has that, same buying power that he might have in 2013. I think he was former Patriarch of Venice, maybe Milan, one of those. I think Venice. But otherwise, yeah, not too much to say there. Comastri, he was the archpriest of St. Peter's Basilica. So over this coronavirus, I guess I can't say that. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm not getting monetized anyways. Over this pandemic period, He's been very faithfully leading the Rosary in St. Peter's Basilica, so I think if he was to get any sort of recognition from that, people might know about him from there. He's 77, I think I'd said that. Let's go Cardinal Gracias. He's from India. He is 76. He's another one on the Cardinal Advisory Council. Cardinal Marx is too, actually, I've just remembered. So that gives him some sort of, influence over the Pope, and, they have the inner ear, so to speak. All of these guys, for the most part, are right around in the age range, too. Cardinal Schomborn, he is been around for a long time. He's royalty of some sort, so not that that means anything today, really. And he's been a bit of a figure himself, too. He's kind of wibble-wobbled between where it seems that the pickings have been good. But he is well known. He's worked on the catechism, so people will know him. Cardinal Sarah, I think maybe every traditional's big hope for becoming the Pope. That's actually possible. I don't think Cardinal Burke becoming the Pope is possible. Sorry, everyone. The one of the top two choices for 5 out of 5 is not Cardinal Burke. Sorry to disappoint. Cardinal Sarah is the former head of the liturgical dicastery congregation thing. He's 76, so he's right around that age too. But otherwise, he's kind of been portrayed a little bit as this, enemy of the Pope or something, when that really isn't the case. I think the Cardinals might be able to figure out that that isn't the case either. And of course, he does kind of have that, extra points from being from a non-Europe place, right? That's something that we kind of have to keep in mind when we're talking about Europeans, is that the competition might be skewed towards the non-European side, except for the Italians, I think. And then, of course, we have Cardinal Tagle. He's 64, so he's the youngest of this bunch. I think that 64 would be way too young, at least in the minds of the Cardinals, because, if there's a conclave in the next, 5 years, he's starting out at below 70. He could go for 25 years. That's a long time. It's a long time. He's the head of some sort of prefecture or something, so he is quite influential. Many people will know him. And of course, he comes from a Catholic nation outside of Europe, so that would be very promising. But again, I think he's too young. He's maybe a candidate where you have a stopgap, and then when he's a little bit older, then you say, okay, now's your time, champ, get in there. So here's those 6 neutral ones. Going 4 out of 4, these are kind of the possible candidates, and I actually think that 2 of these, even though I have 2 rated in the 5 out of 5, I actually think it might be more likely that 2 of these 3 might become the next Pope, just based on the criteria that I've thought to be important. We have Cardinal Bassetti. He's 79. He is the president of the Italian Bishops' Conference. So obviously he knows the Italian bishops, he'll know the Italian cardinals, and he seems to be of good friendship with Pope Francis too. So I can't imagine that he wouldn't be unknown to many other cardinals as well. He's in Italy, so that will do wonders for him. Cardinal Bagnasco is 78, so he's a little younger than Cardinal Bassetti. He was the former president of the Italian Bishops' Conference, and now he is the president of the European Episcopal Conference's thing. So European cardinals will know him, and already that would put him, at a good advantage. And they're both right around in that age range where they are both of a older age. If there is a conclave soon, they might be well positioned to be elected. And, if you already have the support of your fellow Italians, that kind of snowballs a little bit into everybody else kind of saying, well, they've got it, so why stand against it? Cardinal Parolin is a little bit different from these 2 in that he's only 66. Although when I was looking at this photo, I thought, geez, he looks quite a bit older than that. But he is only 66. He's lots of experience in diplomacy. He's the Cardinal Secretary of State, so he's very well connected. He kind of, runs the show in a secular sense, more or less. However, he is 66, so that's a little bit young. And he also is, I think, attached a little bit to some financial reform scandals. So maybe not as great an image. Give it a couple years, maybe after another Italian pope, maybe we could say that. However, I think, in my personal opinion, maybe I shouldn't have spoiled it so early. I actually think that Bassetti or Bagnasco would have the best shot. But we will go on to those 5 out of 5s right now. And, lo and behold, who could have foreseen it? Cardinal Turkson, 72. He is a little bit on the younger side. However, he is non-European. He is very well connected. He's a curial creature. He works in the Vatican. He's connected. People know who he is. He speaks Italian. Probably acceptable to the Italian candidates, so he could be a good shot. Again, he's a little bit younger, though, so that's, it puts me on pause and say, well, maybe they think he's a little bit too young. Cardinal Ouellet, he's the head of the people that decide the Congregation for Bishops, and he's 77, so he's kind of right in that range too. The only thing that I really could say would work against him is that he's from North America, and he's from Canada, so he's not from the United States, but he is from North America. But he does kind of have all of those qualities that would tick him off as a good candidate. Both of these guys have been stated to be papable beforehand in the previous 2013 election. Others on this list have as well. I think Bagnasco is one of them too. Obviously, he did not become the Pope. But I think just because of the age, if there is a conclave in the next two years maybe, I think Bassetti and Bagnasco actually could make a bit of a dark horse run, if that's what we want to go with. Obviously, I think the media will focus mostly on Turkson and Ouellet as being the two front runners, really, and I think there's good reason for that. Now, of course, when I mentioned the time-sensitive thing too, in 5 years, how many people will be cut off from this list? That's 4, 5, 6. It's 4, 5, 11. So about 12 of the people on this list, and there's 22 on it, 12 of them would be cut off in 5 years if there is no conclave. If there's a conclave within 5 years, maybe we could see a couple of these ones. If there's not, that makes things very interesting, because then I think Cardinal Turkson still reigns supreme as being very likely, but I think it also increases the odds of others, because of course you have these reputable, well-connected cardinals fading out and being, being unable to be voted for or vote themselves, and I think that makes things very interesting. This was just kind of me shooting the shot. I just kind of wanted to think about it, mess about it, see what factors I thought would be important to the Cardinals. Maybe they'll disagree. Maybe when the time for the conclave comes around, we'll get somebody that I did not think would even be possible. That's certainly not impossible. Maybe it's more likely than we think. But this was kind of my take on it. I would say, if I had to make a prediction, if I had to make a bet, if I had to bet money on it, I would actually go with Bassetti or Bagnasco. Those are kind of the two that I think could make a strong case that people would not expect. Obviously, like I said, the media perspective will probably focus on Turkson or Ouellet as being very, very much so papable, and I think with good reason. But it's just my feeling that the Italians might want to rein things in a little bit and put one of their own guys in. But that's my take on it. Maybe let me know what you think. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think that somebody else makes a good case. Maybe you think Cardinal Marx or Cardinal Burke actually are the 5 out of 5 most likely. That would be a very interesting take, especially if that was the same person. But there we go. Hope you're all doing well. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.